I'm going to define some terms in this video, and hopefully this will make sense. So the beginning portion is actually completely unnecessary. So talking about perennial, blah, 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 that is extraneous information. The most important things you need to know is that it's a tetraploid and that it creates diploid gametes for reproduction. So that is one key thing that we have. The other thing is that we are looking at the third line of this problem is also useless, given it's just for the context of the question. Same except for the fourth line, where we define that capital Z is dominant to the drought-tolerant variant, little z. And so, of course, we would want the little z in a drought state. So, assuming you tried the question, let's begin. So the question is asking, let me pull up the drawing function. Oops, that's the wrong thing. So we have probability of 2z, z, z, z in next 4, right? So that's what we're looking for. And there are two ways to do this. I'm going to go over the easier way, and then I'm going to go over the way where you use binomial probability. Both ways work, and whichever is preferable to you. I prefer using the more intuitive way, but binomial probability is the more quick way. So if this problem showed up on an exam, it would probably be preferred to use the binomial theorem. So let's scroll down a second. So what does this really mean, right? This could also mean, this is essentially equal to saying not 1 or none z, 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 right? That's essentially saying the same thing, right? Not 1 or none z, z in the next 4 offspring. And that brings me to the other thing. Progeny, if you didn't know, just means offspring. So we need to calculate how many cases, since we're doing the exclusion rule here, right? It's simply easier to count up the exclusion than the total number of ways we can have at least 2, right? Or I should bear in mind, this is an at least 2, right? At least. So let's count. This is something that you can actually count out. So I'm going to denote, since we want all 4 little z, I'm going to set up 4 offspring spots. So let me erase that. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have 4 offspring, right? We have 4 offspring ready. We want not 1 or none, right? So I'm going to denote this term as just z, just for simplicity. So one option is we have little z here, and then we have something here, something here, something here, right? We could, because if we look at the parents, it's 1 capital Z, 3 little z's, you could have offspring that are heterozygous, so 2 capital Z's, 2 small z's, or you could have some other variant where it's the same as the parents, so 1 capital Z, 3 little z's. But that's not the point of the question, and we want to find the little z's, right? So these probabilities here we'll figure out later. But right now we are trying to find the number of combinations, or should I say more specifically, the number of ways we can arrange to have little z's, right? So we can have this arrangement. You can also have this arrangement, and as you can see, it would appear that there are 4 different arrangements. So I will draw out all 4. Right, so those are the 4 arrangements, right, for 4 little z's. And of course, there's only one arrangement if you want no little z's. This is the simplified calculation way. I want to get the conceptual idea out there. Of course, if most of you would probably be more math inclined than I am, and so you would probably be thinking, why not just do 7 choose 1 and 7 choose 0, which turns out to be the same thing. As you can see, 7 choose 1, or not 7 choose 1, my bad. Should I say 4 choose 1? I'm not sure why I said 7. 4 choose 1 and 4 choose 0. So 4 choose 1 is 4 over 1 factorial and 4 minus 1 factorial. And 4 choose 0 is just 4 factorial, 0 factorial minus times 4 minus 0 factorial. And that, of course, gets you to just 4 ways and 1 way. So as you can see, if you are more math inclined, you can use this setup. Of course, on a real test, you would probably need to use these combinations, but for the sake of the problem, I want you to conceptually understand why we use these combinations, right? So I want to count these out first. So let's scroll back up. And so we figured out there are 5 outcomes, right? And now all we have to do is find the probability of even having one for little z, right? Like, what's the probability of this event just independent by itself without the other 4 happening? And same with the excluding probability. Oops, I accidentally drew there. So the parental generation, as we recall, is capital Z and then 3 little z's crossed with the exact same thing. So we have a tetraploid that can form diploid gametes, right? Tetra meaning 4, diploid, dip meaning 2, right? Di meaning 2 actually. So the offspring combinations we could have are ZZ, or yeah, capital Z, and little z, right? There are no other combinations in here, right? And so for the sake, oh, I should probably be more clear here. I'll use a red pen for capital Z. Okay, so red standing for capital Z. So in this case, it's relatively simple. In other cases, if the combination was with 2 capital Z's and 2 small z's, the possible combinations will be a little more difficult. But because there are only 2 options, if you count this out, it will actually turn out to be about 1/2 probability for each one to happen. And this is pretty simple. You can just simply do, how many ways can you do capital Z and little z? We can do 1 here, 2, 3, right? So that's 3. If you do little z, you could do 1, 2, and 3, right? Those are the 3 ways you can do it. And so that gives you 6 ways, but in reality, we're looking for 4 choose 2, and there's repeats, right? So it turns out to be just 3 divided by 6, right? So for any of you mathematically inclined again, 4 choose 2 times the repeats, or I should say 1 over 4 choose 2. So repeats divided by 4 choose 2, which is equal to 3 over 6, which is equal to 1/2. And of course, this is way longer than what is needed on the exam, and I assume most of you are probably capable of doing this without the long explanation, but I figure I might as well give a long explanation. So now we know the probability of one parent producing ZZ offspring, right? Little z offspring. It's 1/2. So this problem is actually relatively simple for that reason, because of for that. So let's find out, what is the probability of little z offspring, right? we can have, so that's 1/2 times little z times another half. And that just gives us 1/4. And therefore, for any of the other combinations, it's simply 1 minus 1/4, right? For all the extraneous variables, right? So for the ones where it's capital Z, 3 little z's, or capital Z, little z. So that would be 3/4 for the others. And so now we just plug it simply into the equation, because recall, we are trying to find probability not 1 or none, right? So probability not 1 or none. So that would be 1 minus the sum of all probabilities, and that would give us our final answer. So 1 minus the number of ways to do 4 ZZ's offspring. And we saw up here, way back up here, we counted 4 ways. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 ways to do that. So, or you can just use the combinations way. So 4 times 1/4 for the number of offspring. So how many z's? How many 4 little z's do we have? We have 1. How many of the others? We have 3. Right? We have a total of 4 offspring. And then subtracting again, 3/4 to the 4th, right, for the example of none. And in that case, there's actually a multiplying by 1 in front. So this is actually really binomial theorem, but there's the forward ways, of course, you can do it. I'm doing the exclusion rule, you can do the other way. And when you multiply this all out, you would eventually get 67 over 256. And so the correct answer is E, or not E, B. The forwards way we can do is also relatively simple, and this is the recommended way if you have an exam. Of course, I'm going to give this one just in case some of you haven't caught on with the binomial theorem. So recall binomial probability So this is just the given event. So how many offspring we have in this case, and the number of specifics we want, multiplied by the probability of the event to the k, so for the number, and 1 minus the probability to the n minus k. That's the probability of the event, so p. So in the forwards way, we would just simply sum up all the probabilities, all the separate individual probabilities, right? So we wanted, the question is asking probability of 2 or more, right? So we need to do the probability of 2, the probability of 3, and the probability of 4. So using binomial theorem, we would get 4 choose 2 times 1/4, right? We're choosing 4 little z's to the squared, or to the second, and conversely with the other, plus 4 choose 3, right? So for the pick 4 little z's, right? And that would be to the 1/4 to the third. And lastly, of course, here, this is 1. And the last term is 4 choose 4. So we want all little z's. And that's simply this. And you sum it up and you get the exact same thing. You can plug it into your calculator and you'll see it equals this term.